Hello, it's Guido coming at you with the second of my Japanese TD reviews. This time moving on to the Tier 6, the Jiro. All right, so in the recent past, I've made a couple mistakes. Just a couple, not many. But in terms of coming down hard on tanks that I turned out to kind of like later on. So I don't have a lot of battles in this. I will tell you that I don't like it much. And I think you've probably heard some of the scuttlebutt on this thing. We'll go over that as we go. I'll reserve judgment in terms of absolutely panning this thing, but we will talk about what I don't like about it as we go. The Jiro is a Tier 6. If you saw my Tier 5 review, you will remember that it does add another loader. So the tank before it has commander, gunner, driver, radio operator, loader, and this one has 6 people in it. 6 people in it and another loader. Now, it's interesting to think about that, especially when you consider that at the same time all of this went down, there was a new crew system coming out that's since been canceled. So, fascinating. If you are moving crew from tank to tank and you don't want them to lose points, that's 200 gold apiece. It's 1,200 gold to move crew. Yeah, and that crew is 6 all the way through to the Tier 10. So just think about that a little bit. Now, I'm not going through much of the modules on this line. One of the reasons is that it seems to be more or less like this. There's only really one module of each type. If we go to the SP, it's the same thing. The Ho-Ri, the same thing. That is very streamlined. There's none of this extra gun or special gun or 2 guns or 2 engines or any of that stuff. So all the way through, they really streamlined all of that. So there's nothing else really to say in terms of going through those. And it seems like you can put stuff on it without getting the tracks, from what I can tell. That's standard there. All right. What is this tank exactly? We go to the details. Wargaming says in 40, they started developing designs for a new tank destroyer. They use a modified chassis of the Type 95. Now remember, the Type 95 is an extremely slow tank, which never went into production due to its large size. High caliber guns could be placed on the vehicle, and a choice was made in favor of the 105 Type 92 field gun. So big old gun on that guy, which is already being used in the Army as a field gun. Engine compartment was placed in the front, and the closed fighting compartment was located in the rear. However, it was discontinued in 1943 due to heightened requirements for mobility and armor, which frankly the Japanese never really satisfied. They seem to, in terms of their armor, have a lot of requirements that they never really got around to satisfying at all. But this thing is kind of definitely a unique looking tank. Really wide lower plate or front plate. I guess the lower plate's there. A lot of flat angles, a little bit of angle right there, but not great. And of course, the great big old gun. So what do we really have here? We have a chassis that can handle a 105 at Tier 6. Now, that's hardly completely unique, although it's a little bit unique. There are a couple other tanks that have big guns at this tier, most notably the 100Y, Su-100Y, which is a massive tank, so we'll compare those as we go. But let's take a quick look at the armor first on this thing, because this will not take a long time. And there it is. Just doesn't have any. The Japanese TD line is kind of interesting. When you get to 7, they start to have some armor. And while I wouldn't say they're exactly assault TDs, the armor starts to become useful-ish at times. The Tier 5 and 6 might as well not have any. As you can see, it's just pinned by everything. 50 millimeters, a little bit better with the angled part, but not much right here. I mean, you have to get to some, I don't even know if you can get to enough angle to turn it. No, not really. I mean, I guess if you managed to bait someone to shoot that, you'd be in good shape. An auto, I don't know. It's just, look, there's nothing else to say. It's horrible. There's no armor, all right? So another tank, much like the 5, where you don't really want to be seen or shot at, but it is larger, it is slower, but it does slap hard with 300 alpha. So let's see what that looks like in comparison. I have chosen the other big hitters. Now I've 3-marked the Churchill and the ARL V39. I've also chosen the Su-100, although that is a premium tank. So not quite an analog in terms of comparison, but it does drop that 440 alpha. So there it is, Giro sitting at 300, right there with the ARL and a little bit higher than the Churchill. Penetration is good. One of the characteristics of the Japanese lines are they have good standard penetration and decent gold penetration or special ammo penetration, which is also an AP round, as noted in the last video. It's not APCR heat, it's just another AP round with some of the pluses and minuses of that. Rate of fire is actually best in class. Gun loading is best. So that 300 alpha, you can get it down to 7 second. Might even be able to get down to 6 second reload. I don't know if we can go quite that far, but pretty good. We'll take a look at what my setup gets you to. And that's dropping 2,086 DPM. So provided you can get the shots down range and don't get seen and penned by everything in sight, you do have an opportunity with this thing to drop some serious pain downrange. And 300 is no joke at tier 6. I mean, you're slapping hard. That will get the attention of even tier 8s, especially if you high roll. The -5 depression is a bit of a problem. The one before it has the same issue. It gets a little better as you move on to upper tiers. This is really pretty good. The field of regard, the azimuth is 18 degrees each side. That's actually pretty decent for not having a turret. 1.92 on the aim time, which is best in class. That's good. And a very comparable, competitive 0.34 dispersion in there as well. Not quite as good as the Churchill, but only one off. And then you can tame that a bit. That's why I like to run the IA. And you can get down to about 0.3, 0.31, which is pretty dang good accuracy. There's the armor. Nothing going on there. Taking a look then at the mobility. Now this is where the tail, the sorted tail gets sorted-er. All right, that's not bad. 40 kilometers an hour. You might say, well, heck, look at that. It's better than these two, and it's got 15 backwards. It's better than all three of these. And then you've got to go right here to specific power, and you just have to say WTF. Now, it's not quite as bad as the Churchill, and the Churchill, though, is at 25.7. This thing is known as a slug. It's on a Churchill chassis, right? It's slow. This thing looks fast, but it's got a similar specific power to the Churchill. So much like the Churchill, if you're trying to go up a hill or accelerate, bring a snack and a drink, because it's going to take you a while to get wherever you're trying to get. 40, I rarely ever saw it. Going downhill, maybe if I had a really long drive on a road, which you tend to not get in this game because you're generally turning or going off-road, trying to move through terrain and stuff. So really, it's nowhere near 40. You hardly ever get there, even with the turbo. I did see 44 going down hills, things like that with the turbo, but wow. Even the turbo did not make this thing feel unsluggish. It was painful. Concealment is 19. This is best in class, at least in terms of these four. Not bad at all. That was a little bit surprising to me, to be honest, because and then let's just quickly, the view range is horrible at 350. Once you get to tier 6, the 350 hurts, although it's up there with the rest of these guys. It surprised me a bit that this thing, where is it? There's the dicker. That this thing is better than, let's say, the Churchill gun carrier. I mean, okay, that's a fairly massive guy, but it's tall. It is compact, I suppose, from front to back. But anyway, the camo surprised me a little bit on that thing. So what do we have in terms of the stats? We have a relatively hard-hitting, pretty dang good standard pen. A nice gun chassis in terms of accuracy and reload, but in terms of getting around the battlefield, the mobility is atrociously bad. I mean, atrociously bad. And that's going to hurt you mid to late game in repositioning. Well, first of all, it's going to hurt you in positioning because you do have to be extremely careful with this tank trying to get to initial positions. Some of the positions you might think are reachable, but with other TDs at tier 6 might not be with this thing because you may get caught out in the open depending on where you're trying to get to. And then the mid to late game, very difficult for following on, getting into the fight, following the battle, repositioning, decapping, all that kind of stuff you might try to do with mobility in the game. This guy don't gots none. All right, my crew was decent. This is actually not the crew. I built another crew that had a lot of stats. I built this crew afterwards because I did take this tank through to all my battle pass points. We'll talk about how I did in it in just a minute. What all this gives me, though, is a 0.31 dispersion, 2,411 average at DPM, not bad at all. Reloads down to 8, so I don't think it's anywhere near 6, but you can get it into the 7s for sure. The camo is decent and all that good stuff. And there you go. All right. How did I do in this thing? Let's take a quick look. Not great, my friends. Not great at all. 22 battles and a 27% win rate. Ouch. But that was 1,298 average damage, which is one of the highest among my Tier 6 TDs. So low sample size, probably not playing the tank to its best strengths. My battle survived is okay at 31, but really a lot of my better tanks are up in the 40s. So what we have here, I think, is I had an ability to get damage down range at 2.3 damage ratio and destruction at 2.27, but mid to late game, I struggled mightily getting this thing into the positions it needed to get to win the game. And that pretty much went down to two things. Number one is the mobility, and two is decision making, which has to be much faster and earlier with a tank like this when it's so slow. All right. So yeah, I could definitely kick out the damage, and really with a 300 alpha gun, let's say you've done 300 and you're losing badly and you're hanging out in the back. If you can knock out another 2 or 3 shots before they take you out, now you're up to 1,200 all of a sudden, right? And you really didn't do anything to help the team. So this one's interesting. Where do I put it on the maps to make it effective to help the win without getting shredded because it has no armor? How do I do that with not a lot of speed? And then mid to late game, when I do keep my hit points, how do I get it to the positions it needs to be to influence the win? I'm still working on that. And that's why at the beginning I said I'm going to reserve judgment a little bit. I like the firepower. I like its accuracy and capability to get shots down range. It's just working around that mobility is really tricky with this tank. I had a 2,644 game with 6 kills. I think that might be on the docket for review right there when we get back and look at a game. My setup, rammer, turbocharger. I don't know. Maybe I drop the turbocharger and put vents or something to help with better accuracy and just accept that it's a slug. Because honestly, I didn't feel like the turbo did much, but I wonder if I take that off, if it's going to feel even worse in terms of mobility. Let me know what you guys think down below on that choice. And then we've got the IA, which is going to give me that nice 0.31. Let's take a look at some gameplay, and then we'll wrap this thing up. All right, Himmelsdorf game, not exactly the TD game. I want to show this one as my example because I got to this point with this tank, and I loaded in Himmelsdorf. Everything had gone south. I was in a 20% win rate-ish, somewhere in there, and I said, well, let's try something different. Let's get creative. And this is actually a pretty good setup for that because if you look at it, I'm top tier, and I don't really have any big heavy tanks to contend with. Right? So top tier, I've got 4s in there as well. So let's just do something different. Let's do the bully thing with the big gun. We'll come down to the banana road instead of crawling up the hill, which is generally what I do. My mobility sucks. It's a good setup in terms of top tier. There's no real heavy tanks I'm too worried about two-shotting me right here, although there is another G-row I want to be careful with. So whatever, let's go down here and just put the big fear factor of the 300 alpha gun on the banana road, and if I'm careful, maybe I can get some guys down on hit points before I start eating shots in my great big old super structure, right? So I'm not really fooling anybody with my armor right here, okay? I do have a slight angle based on the way I'm set up, but pretty much anybody that shows up is going to let me have it. Now I'm watching the map, but we take a look over here, and we can see that people are headed up the hill over here, a lot of them, and we have some guys down below, and nobody's showing up to the banana road. If you look at the other setup, anything that might show up here, unless the Excalibur or Jackson or T-78 was getting a little bit crazy, isn't really going to be much of a threat to me. In fact, a couple shots on a couple of those guys and they're out of the game, right? 2 shots into a Matilda, 2 shots into a P2640, and then we got the Matilda. So we slap him hard for 322, right through that truck. I did have an option to knock that truck down, but a lot of times I get that situation, I shoot the truck, and then they show up as soon as I've fired. So we're going to just go dark so they don't see me coming because I'm so tricky, right? Oh, okay, I did eat a shot, and oh, there's a miss. All right, that's not what I want to have happen, but they're both dropping 60 and 50. All right, so I can handle a couple of those. I'm not too worried about it. He missed, and holy cow, snap Areno. So you take a little luck, my friends. When things are going well, you take a little luck. The Chihei bails, which I think is very fascinating, actually, based on how many tanks I have spotted, where the various tanks are, and the fact that he just ran away. So I guess he didn't like the 300 alpha, and it feels like to me he doesn't have a lot of friends. Now this is early in the game. This is where you can really get baited to push in too hard, too fast, even if it's not a conscious effort on the enemy team. But the Stewart's doing me a solid also, because he just proved there's nobody sitting there ready to hit me. Chihei takes a couple hits. You can see he doesn't like that, so he's falling back, going after the Stewart. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I can just swing around here. Is there a T-28 back here? I don't know. Yep, there is. All right. So he's not paying attention. He's looking up on the hill. We'll slap him for 261. Now they know I'm here. I do want to be careful because I don't want guys coming around both sides. Unfortunately, our little YOLO guy died, so let's pull back. Discretion being the better part of valor at this point. We'll push back, and see if we can't bait them to come in and eat some more 300 alpha shots. Now, messing around down here and doing it this way obviously leaves the critical terrain of the hill to the rest of the team, so you are taking a bit of a chance right there. And I'm not putting any pressure on the enemy team right here and helping them out. I was a bit surprised they didn't come at me. I see the T-28 is still messing around in the window. He doesn't look interested in coming my way. I don't know where the Chihei is. He's not come at me, so let's just investigate further. Maybe we can come around here, find a guy to shoot. Maybe we can even surprise somebody. So we'll come around the corner. It's always the standard trick with these tanks. I should have shot that. So the T-28 knows that I'm there. So does everybody else who's paying attention to the map. And what I'm concerned with is the Chihei coming around the corner. Excalibur. Uh-oh. So now I'm looking at maybe getting sandwiched here. So I'm not liking this. Hopefully the Excalibur doesn't come. That didn't work. Let's back out. Now he's got a buddy. Chihei has showed up, and this is really feeling uncomfortable now. But this dude starts coming at me, which surprised me. Nuke him. Took a chance. Guess what? Excalibur's not interested in coming up to take me on. I can see he's moving into the corner. Meanwhile, the hill has won, which has kind of forced the Excalibur's hand, although he would have done a lot better just to come clear me out of there. So we'll move in, see if we can get in behind. Maybe there is somebody over by their spawn point. I see the Chihei moving around. A little bit worried about that right there, but the Achilles nukes him. I sort of figured that the Achilles would engage him for a bit. And if he killed the Achilles, I'd have to turn around. Excalibur's doing a runner. He hasn't been spotted for a while. I'm assuming he's going to show up here. Nope, he's still up in the corner. That's a bummer. And now it looks like maybe he's going to try to get away. So we'll see if we can't cut him off if he makes a runner this way. You know there's a crossroads there. So looks like he's definitely running. You can see his marker moving. We'll slap him for 300. We will back out in case there's somebody off to the left there. I know there's a G-row, and I don't want to take all 300 of his alpha. That guy gets me. I figured he would, and we'll nuke him. We're up to 1,723 and 3 kills. And honestly, this is about the only game where I felt like my mobility and decision-making was good enough to make this tank work. Notice I'm only doing 25, guys. All right, so I'm on prepared road. I am turning a little bit, shaving off speed. 26, 27, 28. And then I have to turn, shave off some speed. I mean, not even close to 40, fellas. It just takes forever to get up any kind of speed when your specific power is that low. That guy rams me for 31, so I get up to 31, positively screaming at that point. So we got several guys hanging out on cap. We'll move over here. The other nice thing about this particular map, Old Himmelsdorf, is it's small, so if you have a relatively ungainly slow tank like this, it's not that hard to get into important positions like coming on over here and trying to get a shot on guys on the cap. And remember, this is an encounter. This guy right here is a bit of a problem because it's hard for me to shift my hole when he's got me wedged in like that. There's another G-row right there. He's not paying attention. We nuke him. I'll be honest, the Snapperinos this game just worked. All right, it's not really that accurate of a gun. .31's good, but not amazing. And I'm doing a lot of shots not fully zoomed, so you'll take that when it happens. Just accept that it's going on because this is World of Tanks and it's how it rolls. The Achilles is trying to get another shot in here. Kind of surprised he didn't kill him. I don't know if... Why did he not Achilles him? Maybe because his angle... No, okay, so what happened there is the Achilles just didn't have an angle based on that train car right there, so I did. So I'll take that. We're down to the T-78, and it's just... This is... I'm beating this dead horse, but this is the pain of this tank. Here I am blazing along at 25. I have a turbo. It supposedly has a 40 top speed, and I just can't get anywhere near the thing's top speed. Oh, tried to, the snaps are working, and that just didn't. So T-28's coming around. He's going to look for a shot. I get hit. I know he's got a relatively long reload, and right after the T-28 puts a shot on him, I drop another one. So 2,206, 6 kills, get a little Top Gun. Little Top Gun action right there, and we end up with the win. Fairly unusual game. Things worked out for me in that. I'm top tier, so that's also helpful. As you noted by my win rate, I had some really atrociously bad games, but I tended to do the damage. So, painful. Perfect setup for its horrible mobility to be able to actually do some things mid to late game. You're not going to find that on a lot of the maps, so it becomes a bit of a painful tank. Let's wrap it up. Well, all right, fellas, there you go. What else is there to say? It's slow. So it does require some thinking, some good positioning. You need to be ahead of the game in terms of repositioning. Late game, if you need speed or the ability to move around, you are going to struggle in terms of how slow this thing is. Going up hills is extremely painful. But what does it bring to the fight? It's got pretty good gun handling. Not great, but pretty good. And it slaps hard for 300 average damage, which is really nice. It's got a nice DPM at 2,411. I did obviously fight it in some tier 8 games. Once anything gets near you, you're in big trouble because you just don't have any armor or mobility. Light tanks circling you, faster mediums, all that stuff really struggles with those. But if you can stand off and get some opportunities with your team spotting things and giving you an opportunity to employ the 300 alpha gun, it can do some pretty good things. So, like I said, we'll reserve judgment in terms of calling it a horrible tier 6. But so far, my experience in it has been horrible. I think my DPG, my average DPG so far, does not support that low of a win rate. So I think I'll get the win rate up. I will bring it up to 100 battles in terms of the 100 battle challenge. It will be interesting to see if I can recover. I've had a couple examples of this lately where tanks and I didn't jive, especially early on, that I was able to claw my way back to 55, even higher win rate later on. So this one is definitely a candidate for that because I've dug myself a pretty dang good hole in terms of digging my way out to 50%. So that will be the challenge with this tank, trying to figure it out. I have set it aside for the moment because I've done all my 100 points for Battle Pass, so it will be picked up again when the next Battle Pass starts. I'll knock out the 100 points on it and see how we go. Let me know what you think of the G-Row down below down there. Anybody having a good time with it? Anybody enjoying the gun or being able to make this thing work? Anybody having as hard a time as I am at 27% win rate in 22 battles or so? Let me know your woes. Thanks for coming by and checking out the channel. Thanks for supporting the channel. Hit a subscribe if you like what you saw, and we will see ya.